Hey y'all, and good now whenever and wherever this finds you. Today I made a video about Liam Madden, and he's a candidate in Vermont. He's an independent running as a Republican. This video is the highlights or the condensed version of, it's a video digest of what he said on Jimmy Dore. And it ends with the statement from Jimmy Dore that basically says, nobody else is doing this. Well, that's not true. Brian's been doing this, he said, for 5 years. Let's get together, yeah, and start the video.
That the two-party system is preventing us from solving problems. It doesn't represent us well. It's driving us apart, and it's controlled by oligarchs. So
I've been very upfront the entire election, every single chance I get to speak to the public, to say I'm an independent running in the Republican Party. That's you talking. The entire theme of my candidacy is to structurally, culturally, and technologically create an alternative to the two-party dominance of our political system, which I think is deeply dysfunctional. It's going to take a departure from this divisive, corrupt, oligarch-controlled, and ultimately non-representative and non-functional system.
Well, it doesn't get clearer than that. He said the entire theme of his candidacy is to structurally, culturally, and technologically create an alternative to the two-party dominance of our political system, which I think is deeply dysfunctional. It's going to take a departure from this divisive, corrupt, oligarch-controlled, and ultimately non-representative and non-functional system. Well, I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're going to do with the Phoenix Congress. We're just going to create a system outside of that corrupt system where we know who we're working with and we know each other. And even if we break it down into districts, in the beginning it's going to be real easy because there's just a few of us, but as it grows, we'll each have our own district in our group within that district and send representatives to the Congress. So if you're willing to imagine and join, we will be the change that we want to see in this world.
well, absolutely, the health of our political system and a whole slate of reforms to it that I think aren't part of what either party really acknowledges. And I call that rebirthing democracy. My website is not called Liam Madden for Congress. It's called rebirthdemocracy.com. Another big issue I'm running on is I'm a renewable energy professional. I co-won MIT's Solve Award for Climate Change Solutions. And I am running on the fact that climate change is not the majority of our sustainability problems. It should be viewed more as a symptom and not a cause. And the cause is an economy that, like a shark, needs to keep swimming in order to not die. Our economy needs to constantly keep growing and using more energy. And we don't have enough land to power that energy with renewables or enough fossil fuels to keep doing it indefinitely, obviously. And so we need a deep foundational shift in our economic system, and you can't do that, can't solve a really complex, scary problem like changing an economic system without a lot of buy-in from the population to make it a healthy system. And so you need foundational changes to our politics. So those are two of my most foundational issues.
Sounds like he's got something similar to the blueprint for a better America. He's got the issues. He understands that to make this happen, we need buy-in. And that's what the Phoenix Congress is about, is we're going to get people to actually buy in $5 a month for union dues to say, I'm here for change. Then as he talks about this fundamental change, we can be part of that. This is so exciting.
The Constitution was designed to prevent the concentration of power, right? And the checks and balance systems were mainly to prevent different branches of the government from overpowering the others. But the only check that the people have against the government itself is voting every 2 to 4 years, often for the lesser of two evils. And that is clearly not enough to course correct a system that becomes entrenched in its own brokenness. So we need more and new mechanisms for citizen engagement that can bypass gridlock or corruption or politicians who just don't listen. So there's a whole range of them on my website, rebirthdemocracy.com. I'll cover a couple. One is just simply the idea of forums, formal forums where people can suggest ideas. And just like social media is a forum technology that is driven by AI to filter to the top the most vitriolic bullshit, and that gets you addicted to it. Now, if we just switch that technology to function in the opposite direction, where it filtered to the top the best modeling of behavior that promotes empathy, perspective taking, and ideas that transcend and synthesize the best values that we have to offer, then you can start to have people not just have more power through ballot initiatives or federal ballot initiatives, but people be better at wielding that power, at being wiser. So that's one level of just like forums and federal ballot initiatives. Mike Gravel, the senator who ran for president, talked about federal initiatives a lot. To the most far-reaching and comprehensive would be this thing called liquid democracy, which is the idea that with technology, you can flow, like liquid, your vote to someone you trust that knows more about something than you do. So Plato had a critique of democracy. Hey, the people who don't know anything about sailing shouldn't be the ones steering the ship. And so that's why we have a republic, because the more informed you are, allegedly, the better you should be at making complex decisions. But the people in Congress are not that informed about all the issues we have. And in order to actually have knowledge be connected to trust, so that there's power, like power should have both knowledge and trust involved in it. And liquid democracy is a method of allowing people to allocate trust to where there is knowledge, to keep the knowledgeable accountable to the public and to hopefully get better decisions. So there's a range of topics I talk about. Just a comprehensive revolution in civic education would be a big part of it as well. But I'm talking about ideas that are generally completely new to the two-party debate that help to bypass the two parties in the first place. Because Thomas Jefferson said, there is no safe depository for the ultimate power of society other than the people themselves. So if the system is broken, it's not just changing the face of one party that will fix it. You need something from outside of that system to influence it. And it has to be the people, right? So what ways can we innovate to bypass the gridlock and corruption and have the people put their best ideas forward? So those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about.
Well, that's really exciting. I mean, everything he said I agree with, and it's what we're talking about doing with the Phoenix Congress. And if he wins, then we have a friend in Congress that we can support and let him know what we're doing and have him part of our checks and balances within Congress. If he doesn't win, then we can have him become a trusted servant within the American Union to create the Phoenix Congress. So while he's talking, I'm thinking, okay, Chihuahua's in my district, and Jesse's in Southern California, and if we can get his daughters and his wife, Stephanie and Nanette, if they join, then we could have a little Southern California group. And then I'm thinking another person that I would like to involve in this early on is Christopher W. Hatton, because he's thinking about distributive democracy, and I would like to see how that fits into building this Phoenix Congress. And maybe he's on a different wavelength, but we'll see. And I can't wait to hear from him. He's getting ready to gear up and get back in the game. I look forward to having some meetings here coming up, perhaps.
Sure. All right. So first of all, forums are nothing if they're not attached to actual power, right? So the forums are just a way to tell legislators, hey, we want this, because Princeton University says that there is a 0% correlation between whether people want something as the greater part of the population and if it happens. So a forum is a formal way of showing legislators, hey, we want this. And if there's enough support, then we should be able to bypass politicians altogether. So it's a more formal way of polling that actually generates a forced action onto the legislatures. So it's like, hey, wait, with 55% people, then you at least need to talk about the bill. If 75% people want it, you absolutely need to pass it, right? Or so it's attaching the forum, which is getting people to show what they want, to ballot initiatives and referenda that are federally initiated and done more than every 2 to 4 years, so that the input the public is having actually has the weight of force, right? Like they have to do it. So that's one thing. So forums alone don't mean anything. I agree. They need to be part of a suite of technologies. And liquid democracy is the idea of flowing your vote to people who know more about a given subject, so that hopefully the instead of all power being concentrated in Congress, where there's basically 435 lawyers who are controlled by corporations, there's just another check and balance where there's people who actually know could potentially also bypass politicians. So imagine you don't know anything about farming, Jimmy, but you know your friend Steph, who happens to know a lot about it. You can help Steph accumulate more power because she actually knows about it and you trust her. And therefore, people like Steph can help to bypass the BS, corruption, gridlock of the two-party system, just to having another means of having the people influence what policy is. So I'm not saying get rid of Congress. I'm saying we need other means to do it. Forums and ballot initiatives are one way to do it if it's done well, and as well as this, this is a more comprehensive idea called liquid democracy. That would be further down the line, of course, but just to introduce, there has to be ways other than just voting that allow voting for representatives that allow people to influence what policies actually get passed.
Well, I'm enjoying this. I love what he's saying. And he's talking about moving in the very direction that I've been thinking about. Some of this stuff, I'm hoping that when we start having meetings, we can review these videos and talk about these things he's saying and see how we feel about it or how we want to act in regards to what we already have built, in the sense of we have the blueprint, although I do think it needs to be reworked. And I do think that it would be good if we could stay on top of it in terms of when things change, we can make those changes in real time. And luckily, Congress moves so slowly that we could keep up, although I do have to admit that the times are changing so fast, I don't know if anybody can keep up with anything.
One of the ways I also view a priority in economics and wage is that creating pathways to worker and employee ownership has to be part of the story. So if you're a small business and you're sharing your profits, then that's one of the ways that your concern is met, as well as my concern about making sure small businesses are more competitive.
You're talking about profit sharing for the workers.
Yes.
Okay.
Another issue I agree on. We do need to have equal ownership of the means of production, not the state, but the workers themselves become it's like they can use one of them to be like the overseer or whatever, the CEO, but they work together to determine what it is that they want and how much they want to produce and when they want to produce it and how much they want to charge for it and who gets the reward. So I really
felt the social pressure to conform that they became the quote good Germans. And I decided then and there that no amount of social pressure would ever make me go along with evil.
You're the only person who's doing this, and you're the nobody else will do anything like it. So we wish you all the luck in the world.
You know, Jimmy Dore doesn't know about us, so he thinks that Liam is the only one doing this, but Brian has been doing the Phoenix Congress for 5 years, and I've just caught on to it, and I'm hoping that I'm adding to the process and that together we make a better product. While he's moving a little bit in my direction, I'm moving a little bit in his direction, and we're coming together, and it's kind of good because we're definitely on different wavelengths, and he's very practical and I'm very spacey. He has some difficulty understanding what I'm up to, and I have some difficulty understanding what he's up to. But I think we're up to the same thing in that what we want a better world of enjoyment. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I'll see you down the road.